Welcome everyone to my travel blog about my cruise to Alaska. This trip occurred last year, the end of May, beginning of June. I drove to Windsor, took the train from Windsor to Toronto, spent the night in Toronto, got up the next day and I flew from Toronto to Vancouver. I spent 2 nights in Vancouver, which is an absolute beautiful city. Took a tour of the city. The next day I got up and I walked to the cruise ship. The hotel I stayed at was only about 4 or 5 blocks from the cruise terminal, so I was able to easily just walk there from the hotel. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this video, and on with the show. This is our first stop, Hoona, Alaska, which is a population of 800 people. It's also known as Icy Strait Point. There are 2 cruise ships in port that day, each one holding approximately 4,000 people. so the population swells to about 10 times its normal size when the cruise ships visit. However, they are set up for the infrastructure for these cruise ships to visit, as they have a cable car system that takes you from the dock over a hill and into the center of town, where there are several shops, restaurants, and tours available. I took a tour through the National Forest with a tour guide who is a native of the area. We were hoping to see some brown bears. We saw a couple, but I was informed that we would have saw more had we came back in a few weeks when the bears are mostly out of hibernation. It was a fantastic tour and a wonderful experience. The next day, we arrived at Hubbard Glacier, Alaska. This glacier is the second largest glacier in the world, the largest being in Antarctica. The glacier is 450 feet tall and 85 miles in length. I boarded a tender boat which pulled up alongside our ship to get an up-close look at the glacier. It was absolutely stunning. It was so beautiful, with beautiful colors of blue from the pure glacier water that is formed in the glacier. The chunks of ice that you see in the water are approximately 250 years old, because that's how long it takes for the ice to reach the front of the glacier and fall into the water. I was fortunate enough that one of the crew members was able to scoop out a large piece of ice and let us hold it. It was an amazing experience. I felt like I was holding a piece of history, as this piece of ice I was holding was approximately 250 years old. Anyways, it was an absolute amazing experience. I'm glad I got to do it, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Our next port of call, it was Juneau, Alaska. Juneau is the capital of Alaska. It is also the only U.S. capital that is only accessible by boat or by plane, as there are no roads leading from the mainland into Juneau because of the surrounding mountains. It is an absolute beautiful city. There's a tramway here that I took up to the top of the mountain later that afternoon. I took a tour of the city, including a whale watching excursion and a trip to Mendenhall Glacier and some waterfalls, and it was absolutely beautiful. Juneau is a really neat city, and I highly recommend going sometime. On our whale watching excursion, we were lucky to see approximately a dozen whales, including a mother and her calf. There was approximately a dozen excursion boats that were looking for whales, and when one boat would spot whales, they would get on the radio and notify the other people where the whales are. We then headed to Mendenhall Glacier, which is a glacier outside of Juneau, and some waterfalls off to the side there that you can take a look at as well. This was absolutely beautiful, and I highly encourage anyone to see there. While I was in Juneau, I ran into a fellow postal worker, so I had to get a selfie with him. I then headed back to the ship, and then I headed off to the aerial tramway that takes you to the top of the mountain. Once again, I really enjoyed Juneau, and I can't wait to return again sometime. The next day, we arrived at our final stop of our cruise, Ketchikan, Alaska. In Ketchikan, I boarded a boat to take a tour of the crab hunting grounds. This boat that I was on season 2 of Discovery Channel's show, The Deadliest Catch. The crew showed us all about how they pull the crab pots out of the water, how they process the crabs, and they took us through the entire process. It was very, very interesting. Along the way, we passed a place called Eagle Point. Eagle Point is home to approximately 5,000 bald eagles. Bald eagles, we learned, are no longer an endangered species in Alaska. In fact, the crew stopped and were throwing fish into the water for the eagles, and they swooped in right next to us to pick the fish up out of the water with their talons. It was so breathtaking and amazing, and an experience I definitely will never forget. The next day we arrived back in Vancouver, where I went to the airport and boarded a flight that afternoon back to Toronto. I spent the night in Toronto, got up the next day and took the train back to Windsor. It was an absolute epic journey. It was an amazing trip, and I highly, highly recommend going to Alaska at least once in your life. I definitely cannot wait to go back there again sometime. I absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful. Anyways, if you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. There will be many more now that I've created this channel. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It's my very first video I've ever uploaded, so I hope I did an alright job. Anyways, thanks guys for watching, and until the next time, I will see you on the road.